And the class begins. Joshua, we are hopefully joining you not live, but hopefully you will be able to view this later on as we move forward. Today we are dealing with the subject of normalizing a database. But before we begin, we probably ought to take a look at the homework that you guys did. And so we're going to take a look over here and take a look at some of the databases that you guys corrected or created here. So we'll start with Mr. AGD, Mr. Aaron Dochi here. And if it doesn't take too long to download, oh, you know what? I may still be connected with the other.
Something.
Yeah. Oh, what was it?
Capital G2 and capital H. No. Capital G2.
All right. Connected. Let's see if this works any better now. Loading up AGD. It's probably going to make me log in again because I'm now on a different connection. Oh, no, that means. Okay. Very nice. Opening up this and going to AGD. Okay, as I was saying, we have now opened up our first name here, and I'm only going to open up 2 or 3 of these just to give you an idea of the kind of thing that I'm looking for here. Now, you can see that Aaron has created something with columns. Columns, the other word for columns, does anybody remember?
Fields.
Fields, okay? So you could say the field name or the column name. The first one is name, second one is food. Does it say columns here?
Yeah, the command, you type in columns and
right, and I think that columns and rows are the more proper way to refer to it. So if you have a choice, use columns and rows, but if you hear somebody talking about a field, if you hear somebody talking about records rather than rows, know that the synonym for columns is fields, and the synonyms for rows is records. Question,
Where
Tristan?
would those alternative names for those two things have come from if people are probably more familiar with columns and rows and would have used those to begin with?
No, because the whole the question, Joshua, is why do we have these synonyms? Why didn't we start off? And the answer is what we have today as a fairly well-established, a fairly well-established discipline of database, we only use an RDBMS, which is a relational database management system. But in the past, and I'm not going into this because I'm aiming at a practical class here, I'm not aiming at a theoretical class, we had heap databases, we had, I forget what those link things are called, there's all different kind of databases that have been in the past. I don't even consider them as valid pieces of technology anymore. In a very niche kind of an area, you may use something besides RDBMS, but as far as I'm concerned, a relational database is the way to go. You're going to use it not only in 99% of cases, but maybe 99.99% of cases. But the question, why do we have records rather than rows? They used to be records. When I went to school, back when we drew on the cave with the charcoal and stuff like that, it was all records. We didn't talk about rows. And it was all the fields, not columns. So the names have moved through the years, and rows and columns are the better vocabulary to use for today. Okay?
so if you type in field instead of column in the MySQL language, it'll still work. In the capitalized, is it still a keyword?
Maybe. It'd be interesting to check and see. Okay? All right, so I see field names here, or column names of name, food, animal, month. Now, here's something interesting. I saw several of you do this, and so I wanted to point it out and comment on it. Phone number. What's the difference between this one as opposed to the first four? What's special about this?
It's an integer. It's a string of integers.
Okay, what else?
It's 2 words.
It's 2 words rather than 1 word.
You should do an underscore for that, shouldn't you?
I would like to see either underscores or just jam them together, but don't use spaces. Will it work? Yes, but you're constantly going to be going around with one arm twisted behind your back. I saw somebody, Timmy, I think you had a field name that had an apostrophe in it.
No.
No?
Do I?
Maybe it was your...
Parent, food, state.
No.
There's a question mark in it.
A question, maybe that's what it is, a question mark, okay? I want you guys to think for table names, for field names, for variable names, in whatever language you're in. Whenever you're thinking this is a name for something, here are your friends. Letters, whether uppercase or lowercase, numbers, and underscore. If you get in a habit of using those three things, and only those three things, in your names for everything, your life is going to be so much easier. Otherwise, you're going to end up banging your head against things. And I'm not talking about in the data. In the data, your name is Tim space shop, and I totally expect that.
PHP later.
But when you're dealing with PHP variables, when you're dealing with JavaScript variables, when you're dealing with the column names in your MySQL, whatever it is you're dealing with, if you will stay away from spaces and special characters other than alphanumerics, alphabet, either uppercase or lowercase, numbers, and underscores would be the one exception. Underscore is the one exception. I have yet to find a language that doesn't allow underscores in its names for anything. Okay? Question, Tristan.
Why are underscores special as opposed to other things?
Because they're never special.
They're not special. They're accepted almost universally. Okay? And you don't have to do any special quoting to make sure that the database puts them together.
They're especially not special.
So for instance, if I were to do a search here, okay, let's say I want to look for the phone number for all the people, and I type up here, select phone number. How do you think that's going to work?
No, it's not.
It's not.
It's
Watch
think
what
there's
happens.
Two different.
SQL query, select phone space number, unknown column phone in field list. I don't know what. Now, can I fix this? Absolutely. I put back quotes in front of it, and I put back quotes after it. Now will it work?
You have to.
No problem. And I've got my phone numbers that come up there. So you see how that can work. There's nothing syntactically wrong with doing it. And I'm not going to say it's necessarily wrong. You may later on work in a company where they expect you to do this kind of a thing, and they just expect you to have back quotes everywhere you do your MySQL. I'm going to encourage you to stick with alphanumerics and underscores. Okay? Clear on that? Let's see what else Aaron has. Anything else that's of interest here? The animal of the month, this. Okay, notice the period here. Passport no. Passport no period. I would encourage it to just be passport underscore NO or passport underscore NUM. Here's something else. There are different, NO period is an absolutely standard abbreviation for number. NUM is an absolutely standard abbreviation for number. Whatever you use,
Be consistent.
be consistent. Don't be switching back and forth. Why? Because in the middle of your code, you'll write in there, select passport underscore num from da 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 da, and then you end up with these errors, and you're like, well, what's the problem? It is passport number. I know I've got passport number there, and you don't realize that you've changed. So whatever you like for your abbreviations, stick with it and be consistent, and dump the periods. Here for NO, here for fave underscore fave period, get rid of the period and the space, things like that. Let's say, are you guys really comfortable with what I was doing with the selects, or do you want me to do these? We've got a month.
I'm not exactly sure what you're doing other than displaying the GUI. Are you actually doing anything besides that?
At this point, you're just displaying it, is all you're doing.
It sort of felt like cheating because we just went there and then we just clicked on a button and it writes it for you.
I've got no problem with that, and it's always available to you wherever you've got PHP MyAdmin, so it's not like I'm asking you to use this thing for a crutch now that you won't have later. It's kind of like after you're married, it's okay if your wife previews or reads your papers before you turn them in, because you're always going to have her with you, and so it's not even really cheating to have her look over your papers ahead of time. But my point here is I want you to become familiar, to start looking at this syntax and to understand what it's for. So when I do something like this, select star from AGD where month equals May, that's going to select all of them in that one record. It's going to give me all the columns from the one row, but it's not going to give me any of the columns from the other row. So did you guys all try something like this?
with the primary keys only, though.
Okay.
I've been told it's better to use the primary keys for this and not just any other thing, because there could be repeats.
It's always better to have an ID. You'll notice, Aaron doesn't have a primary key here, despite the many warnings to the contrary that were given in the assignment. All right. Now let's see if I want to change this macaroni and cheese here. I double click on it. Why does it let me?
Yeah.
Do you have one and I don't see it?
What?
Yeah.
Primary key?
Yeah. Where's your primary key?
Look at the top, Dad. Top 3 to the right.
Top 3 to the right. What am I looking at?
Oh, why is it off?
Oh, you made name a primary key.
But there's nothing there.
But aren't they both blank? Oh no. Okay. So you've got a blank one here and Aaron here, and a blank value is acceptable as a value. But if I now insert a new value, okay, and I leave that value blank, and I say, I don't know, whatever, foo bar, that's an integer, etc., etc., and I try to add it in without, notice I've left a blank value here in name, watch what's going to happen.
1, 0.
Okay?
Oh.
Duplicate entry, quote, quote, in other words, nothing, for key primary. I would encourage you, as you are looking at your structure of your tables, to always plan. This is not required, but it makes life so much easier if you do it. Plan on having an integer auto increment as your thing, so as your primary key. So I'm going to add one column at the beginning of the table. I'm going to call it ID. Why? Because every single time I create a table, I always create it with ID as the primary key. It's always an integer, and it's always auto increment.
Where's the auto increment? Is that
Right here. Okay. And it's always the primary key. That's the first thing I do. You know what that means? I don't have to stop and remember, let's see, what did I call my primary key in that table? And do I have to give it a value, or will it automatically increment and automatically give me the appropriate values? I know what it is every time. So, multiple primary key because you've got the other one. All right. Now, I don't want to have to go back through and do that. So I'm taking advantage of the fact that I know these are SQL statements. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go back and look at my structure. I'm going to, let's see, how do you remove a primary key?
I tried it and I have no idea how to do it.
Just restart the table, make a new table, delete the old.
No.
And I don't know how to get rid
I
of
already once deleted it by accident.
it. Indices down here. Okay, drop. All
It
right.
says indexes. Isn't it supposed to be indices?
I think so too, but
Who wrote that?
I don't know. I didn't do it. I'm innocent. All right, so I'm going to have as my SQL statement here this same alter table that we had here before. And now when I come and look at my structure, I should see that the top one now is an ID and it's auto increment. All right, I like that. Did I make it the primary key? I forget.
Why doesn't it show?
How do you add an extra?
The entry based on ID. What?
How do you add an extra using the GUI?
Using the GUI, what I just did. See right down here when you're looking at the structure tab, right here,
Yeah.
you see all of the fields, all of the columns here. Then down below that, you've got this. Add how many fields, or how many columns, excuse me, and where do you want them to be added? Do you want them to be added at the end of the table, at the beginning of the table, or after, and then you can choose which field
And
you want it to be put in.
extra auto increment thing?
The auto, well, once you do that and say go, then it's going to bring you up, and when you're defining your tables, it's at that point that you define the auto increment, make sure it's an integer, and make sure that that's your primary key. All right? All right, let's go ahead and look at Mr. CRD. See what Coleman Dill has up here, if he has something interesting. Kilroy, Rodrigo, Jemima, John, and hi Joshua. So we have some years in here. We have phone numbers, again with a space. Again, I would prefer that to be without the space. You also have everything, and this was the same with Aaron's. Everything is uppercase first letter. It's title case is what this is called. Upper first and then lower the rest. Be standard in whatever you're going to do. My personal preference on column names and on table names is to have them all lowercase. I find that to be just very pleasant to read my SQL, because then all of my reserved words, my select, my insert, my where, all of those are uppercase, and all of my table names, column names, all that stuff is lowercase. So I just glance at it and it kind of jumps out at me what's being used for what. There's no confusion in my mind. Is it wrong? No. It's absolutely right. Just be standard in what you're doing, and I will express what my personal preference is. My personal preference based on years of working in this, that I found it to be helpful. So it's not just entirely personal preference. I'm telling you there are benefits to that. Let's take a look at Mr. HK here. Hemgill has some usernames. Oh dear, I'm not seeing anything that looks like a unique column. Current selection does not contain a unique column. Grid edit, checkbox, edit, copy, and delete features are not available. So let's say I want to change this value here. Ooh, doesn't work. Let me change this value here. Ooh, doesn't work.
Why not?
Because it doesn't have an index, a primary index. If I go up a primary or a unique index, if I go up here in my structure, do the same thing that I did before, I'm going to add one column at the beginning of the table and go. Christopher, are you paying attention to this? Because this is the question you asked. So now I'm adding this at the beginning. What's the name? ID. Leave it as an integer. Go off to the right here. Make sure that it's my primary. Or it could have been a unique. It's okay to have a unique index, but you want it to be primary in this case. And then I click save. And now what happens when I come in here and do browse? Now all of a sudden, oh, look at all these options that I've got that I couldn't do
Yeah,
before,
I like that option.
because you have to have a unique index in order for it to be able to say, oh,
Just for the GUI?
update this value where the unique index is this. Otherwise, it has no way of doing it within SQL. You always want to have a primary key, and you always want it to be unique. Question, Coleman.
Wouldn't it be okay to do it for the username, since there's not going to be any repeating?
The question is, would it be okay to have username being a unique index? The answer is yes, except it certainly wouldn't work in this case, would it? Because you've got two blank values there. So should it be the case? Yes, it should be the case that username is unique. However, I'm going to recommend once again that you always have ID and have it be numeric and have that be your primary key. Then username should be a unique index. It should be a unique index, it should be indexed, but I would not make it my primary key. I would make that a secondary key, a secondary index, and call it a unique index. If you have a set of values that you're going to be looking up a lot, you're going to be looking things up based on those values, you want to have an index on it. If you know that there will never be a case where you have a duplicate value, then make it a unique index, and that's a better, faster lookup. If it's not unique, if you're going to have duplicate values, then you just set it up as a straight index rather than another, and I forget what they call that. I think it's just called an index. So what kind of an index here? Okay, you see the different kinds of things you've got. You've got unique, index, spatial, I don't know what that is, full text. That's a really cool new thing that allows you to search on any word within it. So if you put your whole chapter of your book inside a single field, it's indexed on all of the words in that field. And so it's not just the first word like a normal index is, but it's indexing on the full text that you have there. Okay, or distinct values. We'll get to that in a little bit. Okay? Questions?
The indices, they don't necessarily store, they're just for the sake of organization in the table, not for storing data in the table?
That's correct. The data is stored in the column, in the row and column, but then the index is another
Column?
Yeah, the row and column. Okay, so each field it's in this row and it's in this place, and that's that cell. If we're using the Excel analogy, that's where the data is actually stored. But there's a separate file which contains the index, which basically puts everything in order by that data, and it's obviously much faster. There's a reason why a dictionary is put in alphabetical order. It's much faster to find something in alphabetical order than to look through 100,000 entries trying to find your entry somewhere in there. It would take you weeks to find. No, you put it in alphabetical order so you can find it. Well, an index is putting it in order by this piece of data that you're specifying.
So there's always 1, 2, 3 or ABC, the way they do it. There's
That's correct.
no other way.
As far as I know, there's no other way. Now, you can have concatenated fields. You can say, I want to have an index of username and name and birthday. And you could put all of those in. And it would put it in order by username first. And then if you did have a duplicate username, it would put it in order by name. And if your username and your name were in the same, then it would put it in order by birthday. So you can do that. And there's good reason for that sometimes. But most of the time, you're just going to do a single key there. All right, let's see what Joshua has here. Okay, Joshua, I see, has got himself an ID. He's got name, gender, age, grade, height, hair color. He's got a space here and country. Everything looks good to me. Okay, I like the fact that he's done the lowercase. The only thing I would do would be to get rid of that space there. Otherwise, everything looks fine there to me. I think I've given you enough to go on for what I was looking for there. You all know how to do the insert statements? Any question on how to do the insert?
Insert into
Table name, and then in parentheses, the
Values.
list of the columns, and then values, and then in parentheses, the list of the actual values that you want to do. All right?
And then there's
I
update,
just put it
set.
together.
Now, there's another way you can do... Nah, I don't want... Yeah, I do. That'll be fun. Okay?
Are you gonna change
I'm going to insert into Christopher's table. All right? Insert into PCB.
Oh, no.
But then I'm going to say... I don't think I need the values here. What do you think that's going to do? I said insert into PCB, and then I list all of the
Is it gonna duplicate everything?
values. Exactly. It's going to select everything. That's what this select from PCB, select star from PCB says. Select everything from his table, but then I've put it in the same context of where I normally would have put my values. Let's see if it works. I haven't done this in a while, so I may not have the syntax exactly right. You have an
It
error.
doesn't tell you which one. It says consult the manual.
I know,
Yeah.
I also so many
It is
times.
annoying.
Spoiled by the PHP, I guess.
Yeah, everything is just told for you. You did
We were
this
expecting
wrong.
this right here, and you did not.
But you could always want to be told what to do.
They have the error numbers that tell you what the error is.
Is it manual?
Yeah, I can't
Yeah,
figure it out.
where's
There,
the-
there is some way to do this, but I don't know exactly what it is. So I'm not going to spend more time.
Next to the
The error numbers say you have an error.
Okay. So there are other alternatives to how you can do those inserts, but what I've given you there is the standard way to do it. Here is Tim's. Got our name, our favorite color, projected death rate, male with a question mark. All right. Interesting. You see how he did that?
Boolean.
He did it as a Boolean, being male or not male, rather than being a code of M or F or something like that. There's some advantages to that. Now, when you get into the transgender new laws and all that kind of stuff, you're kind of stuck. You can still say, okay, not male, but then you don't have any way of specifying other, which is weird. All right? States, I don't know what that is,
Alive or
mood,
dead.
and appearance.
It's a slug.
State as in.
Okay?
No, I don't.
Now, in the mood there, that's any value that you want. In the favorite color, we're going to talk about some things like there. Good. And TVH, we've got an uppercase TVH. I would have preferred lowercase, but I'm just telling you that now, so no problems there. I like your camel case. That's a very appropriate way to do it if that's the standard that you choose to use. Camel case, where you see he's got the number jammed together, but he made a capital N, so they call it camel case because it's like it's got humps on the back of a camel.
Yeah.
All right, and it's a very nice way of being able to have multiple words put together without spaces or underscores. And for instance, JavaScript, the standard way of naming your variables is camel case, but always starting with lowercase. That's just the standard that they use. And if you look at examples out on the internet, almost across the board, that's how they do it. So they would have said, instead of the number with capital T, capital N, it would be the number with lowercase t, capital N.
But that doesn't look as formal.
I'm just telling you what JavaScript does. Okay?
But as you can see, like for all the under the number, all the
Uh-huh.
odd ones don't match up with all divided by 2. It's all rounded up.
Uh-huh.
And even when I changed it to the decimal thing, it still rounds it up. How do
Because it's an integer, and integers are not decimals.
I don't understand.
To decimal.
Oh, it is
Okay,
decimal.
you've got a decimal here, but you've got a decimal 11 comma 0.
Oh.
All right, so if we were to go in and change this,
From 11 to 0?
I'm not going to use decimal, I'm just going to use a float.
The number of decimals.
What's a float?
What's the 11?
Float is the same as a decimal, but I'm just going to do it like, float is a little bit more standard in my book, maybe not in everybody's book. Okay, and then you wanted to be able to go in and say, where's an odd one here? You wanted this one to be 4.5?
Yeah.
Okay,
5.5.
yeah, I have trouble with math. But anyway, you can see now it's,
Yeah, okay.
now it's capable of doing it. Because you said 11 comma 0, that said 11 before the decimal and 0 after the
I don't
decimal.
know where the 11 came from.
Okay, that's just what they came in as their default there.
11.
Okay, so good job. And I'm assuming at this point that you guys can do a basic creating a table. Use the GUI, I don't care. Okay, there is a special SQL syntax for creating tables, but I have no problem with you using the thing for that. But I would like you to recognize a basic insert, basic delete, basic update, and a basic select. This last one, you will recognize it by the end because we're going to be doing select, 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 select from now until the end of April. Okay?
The end of April is not that far away.
I know.
It's the 24th.